Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. We've got a really fun one for you. With us we've got 4 experts in their own fields of marketing. So we've got PR, PPC, SEO, customer advocacy, and me who's the generalist and does a bit of everything, boring. But we're going to be asking each other some really spicy questions. We'd like to think they're spicy. If you find them boring, please leave more questions that we can ask that are much better than that. But we do all like each other. It's not that we don't, but we want to ask each other the questions that we have had asked to us and do a little bit of an interrogation into each of the different specialisms in marketing. We're all going to come together and be friends at the end, so no worries, no bridges were burnt during this podcast, hopefully. But to kick off, we are going to start with PR.
Ooh, it's very spicy. I'm Courtney Glymph. I'm founder and MD at YourStory PR, a B2B technology PR agency based out of London. We're a team of about 20 across the globe, and we do everything related to marcoms and PR to raise brand awareness for really exciting tech companies.
Hi, Courtney. So, Courtney, what if I do get coverage? Doesn't that mean I'll get sales as well?
Oh, my favorite. That's like the favorite place to start. Why isn't PR driven more sales for our team? So the question, or this question that I do get, I always say that PR is like akin to a sales cycle in general. So if you think that your sales team's going to secure, the biggest lead of the year after a month, then good on you. It's rarely ever possible. PR is a function within the marketing, the broader marketing matrix that clients have. And while we do like to say that there is a correlation between obviously brand awareness, people knowing who you are and therefore finding you and therefore buying you, it's a little bit more difficult to make that sort of very easy dotted line connection between the two. So I always sort of counter that with clients to say, what does the rest of your marketing and sales function look like? Is it mature? Is it set up properly? Is the engine working so that PR can add to that engine, rather than if this is the only lever that you're pulling, well, we're all in trouble.
And it seems like a lot of PR companies always want for you to always be in the media, which, is a convenient business model. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's something to be said for consistency. And I think you have to be really programmatic and pragmatic in how you talk about brand awareness and consistency and reputation. So it really also depends on the size of your company. Are you establishing yourself, or are you an established brand? And so there's sometimes a need for a smaller company to have a consistent drumbeat of activity so that they can establish themselves and build on that reputation, or create that reputation and create that brand. Whereas some of the larger established organizations in the world don't need the actual news every single month or every single week, right? They have that level of awareness that comes with always being in the news just by, as a byproduct and a proxy of what they already have built. So it really depends on where you are in the sliding scale of developing your organization. But it's similar to, the other areas of sales, the other areas of marketing. Do you need to be doing X every single day or every single month? Probably not. But are you building towards that level of consistency? Then yes. So from a strategic perspective, you want to build a consistent drumbeat and avenue of activity, and you have to be sort of mindful of why you're doing it and where. So that to me feels much more streamlined and efficient than just saying we want to have news all the time.
Definitely, it seems to be a massive focus for people if they're going to do PR. They're like, why am I not on a BBC headline every 5 minutes? Along that thread,
if I had a dollar, or a pound for every single time someone was like, well, why aren't we in TechCrunch? I'd be a millionaire. I'd be a millionaire.
Courtney would be a rich lady.
I would.
She'd probably be in TechCrunch.
Yeah, I'd be in TechCrunch.
So if just to play devil's advocate here, Courtney, because I'm imagining the business person with their objections. So if I need to be constantly seen, and I can't necessarily track a direct dotted line through to sales, how do I justify continued spend in PR when there are so many other marketing activities sort of vying for my attention?
I think there's 2 things. I don't know if brands need, especially the brands that we work with, need to be constantly seen. They probably need to be seen in the right circles. So that's the first thing. We'd want to map out exactly where they need to be seen and when. And then the other, I guess, and this is a question that we do get, is around spend. And if we're not seeing that, someone clicked on the article, which means they clicked on the website, which means they bought from us. It's very easy to, sorry, let me take a step back. It's easier to do that with B2C. So if someone's selling a physical product and if there is a link on the BBC website, then we can very easily track that. You can go through website conversions and third-party traffic. When it's B2B sales, if someone's selling a SaaS platform, it's much, much harder, right? So you can do measurement. We do a lot of Google Analytics review and Search Console, and we do as much as we can with the various Frankenstein platforms that we're putting together to understand how PR is supporting that. But also it's also a gut feeling. A lot of clients know that PR is helping them in some way, shape, or form, and they sort of get it. The clients that get it. And it's not just we've sold X, Y, or Z, but it's that our competitors are now, tracking us, or analysts now know who we are, or, we're coming up on page 1 of Google for X, Y, and Z. So it's a function of everything else that's going well. So it's a brand awareness exercise as much as it is supporting lead generation and reputation management. So I often, this is why I often say it's not a siloed activity. If you're going to do marketing, then let's invest in the various levers of marketing that will help you succeed. So again, it can't be one of those things. It should be, a team activity as such.
And what about the businesses where the main reason why they want to do PR is because the founder just wants to be everywhere on everything?
Well, there's something to be said for building a personal brand and personal profile. There was recently in a publication called Sifted, there's been a whole load of recent articles about founder profiles and building a personal brand. And ultimately, people do buy from people. That's the name of the game. And so there tends to be also cult followings for founders who are really dynamic and really exciting. So to say you shouldn't have a profile isn't actually true. Lots of founders have to carry the company on their back for a number of years. People still associate Monzo with the former founder who's left. They still associate Dark Trace with the female CEO whose name escapes me at the moment. But that's part of the sort of part and parcel to being a really dynamic founder. So it's not as much that they need to be everywhere, but they need to curate their personal brand so that people are interested in that and want to learn more about their story. So more than anything, I will tell founders and CEOs, we need your time. You have to invest in this. PR is just not going to go off and do it and you're suddenly just going to be everywhere. You have to be invested in that. And so there is something to be said for curating and narrating and developing a personal brand so that you can ultimately sell your business as well.
Let's hear it for PR. Yeah, should we move to yes, well done, Courtney. Should we go to PPC? Dan, are you ready? Limbered up?
Thanks, Ruta and Emma, for having me on the podcast. So yeah, I'm Dan Montagu. I'm a performance marketing manager at Unmind, and I've been working in PPC for the past 5 years, been working with a mixture of sort of B2B and B2C clients. So yeah, again, thanks for having me on.
So Dan, I find ads really annoying. They're really annoying. Especially that there's that Hello Granny advert. If I hear that one more time, I'm actually probably going to kill someone. I don't want my brand to appear annoying to people. So what do I do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's something that I hear sort of quite a lot. I think, advertising is so sort of entrenched in all of our daily lives. I think we probably see 20, 30 ads today, and there's some sort of crazy statistics around that. And, we all know that sort of Total Jobs, hello, sort of granny advert, I got the job and all that. And I think I must hear that about 5 times a day for the past 6 months or whatever. But I think, going back to it, I think trying to sort of break down what sort of PPC is about, really kind of answers that question. You want to be showing, the sort of a solution to someone sort of who has an issue, the right person at the right time. And, that Hello Granny advert's an example of all of our lives where it's not solving a direct sort of problem that we have. We're not sort of in the market to sort of change jobs or whatever. And so it comes across as really sort of disjointed and out of place. And I think there does need to be sort of, I think a couple of things kind of contribute to this. So I think one, there's sort of a targeting kind of perspective there, and targeting the right people, but also making sure, if we're thinking from even B2B from a funnel perspective, that we're not sort of jumping the gun and sort of as soon as someone visits a website or shows some interest, they're sort of immediately shown a demo request. And so, and equally, someone who's really in the market to buy, getting like a simple, like, just look at this blog post isn't sort of going to quite sit right. So I think it's about targeting people kind of at the right time. But I think also, sometimes PPC can be seen as sort of a tick box, and sort of when you kind of look at that ad, you can kind of think that they were like, okay, well, we need to do some PPC. So they put some creativity, they got the ad out, but now they've just kind of letting it run. And there's some budget that's just going into it sort of every sort of month or so just to kind of let it run. But actually, it's something that needs to be, consistently kind of worked at, sort of the ad sort of updated and changed to sort of really keep it vibrant and really keep people interested. I think one sort of campaign that I think I find quite interesting and sort of delights me is the sort of some of the train line ads where it's this guy with like stupidly big shoes and sort of saying like, oh, some people like it difficult. And I think that's a great example of like watching an advert that wasn't annoying. Like, I genuinely enjoyed that as a good bit of content, and I don't really see why I think ideally sort of all kind of ads should be sort of people should enjoy them in some way, whether it be because it's funny, it's informative, it's solving a solution. And so, I would pose to that maybe senior stakeholder or whoever's kind of saying that sort of, do you want your brand to kind of be seen by sort of the right people at the right time for solving a solution? And obviously they're going to say yes. And PPC is an avenue from sort of where you can do that. So, so I'm no doubt I'm going to see that Hello Granny 10 more times today. But yeah, I'd advise kind of maybe not doing that and sort of putting on the thinking cap and thinking a bit more about it.
I've got a question on PPC. So my little boy is now 5. When he was 2, the first technology thing that he learned how to do was to hunt the little skip ad button at the bottom of a YouTube ad. And I don't know anyone, you talk to people and they're like, yeah, I never click on the ads. Google Ads doesn't work. I never click on any of those ads. So I'm teasing because I know the answer. We run PPC as well. But what do you say to those people that are like, ads just don't work? They're all annoying. Doesn't matter what the creative's like. Doesn't matter how tightly you cap the frequency. Ads are just like a negative net drain on our entire world and society, and we just want them to go away.
I think PPC, as kind of I mentioned a little bit before, done badly, sort of does, can get that kind of bad rap and sort of being the quick kind of annoying, dirty way of kind of getting kind of leads in as opposed to kind of other marketing channels. But, I think part of that can be due to kind of some of the sort of ad tactics kind of used in the past. So kind of, gate everything, and so suddenly you're getting all these kind of gate everything, or just having all these emails saying book a demo now, and it's kind of you've only just kind of experienced come across the brand for the first time, or maybe you haven't even heard about the brand at all, and you're like, well, I don't want to book a call with you, I don't even know who you are. And I think there is a way of doing it where if you're providing kind of you're a service and you're providing engaging content to solve an issue that someone has, I don't see sort of any reason, why that would sort of come across as annoying. If you're, when I kind of think about predominantly kind of looking at LinkedIn, and I sort of see sort of an ad saying sort of like, free checklist for like PPC audit, or top 10 tactics for this and that. Really, as someone who's in the PPC field, and although that's an ad that is interesting to me and engaging, and I'm completely happy to get that sort of popping up on my feed. However, there's my email is completely filled with kind of random SDRs or recruiters or things like that, where it's all kind of automated, and that's kind of where the annoyance and kind of disjointedness sort of comes from. So I think if you do it right, I don't see a reason why it has to sort of come across like that.
Can I ask, just to follow up on that, where, especially from a B2B perspective, I think it's a little bit harder, but that's just my gut sense. What are some examples of where it's actually, you've seen it done well, like it's been actually really effective? Because again, it feels like 9 times out of 10, it's really hard to be effective.
And similar, I think, to what you were saying a bit before, Courtney, I think a large part of it is just making sure that the whole marketing kind of operation is kind of working together. So where I've seen it worked really well is where PPC is not seen as like an extra tick box. It's kind of intrinsic within the planning, within the marketing department. Like there's been identified, a real problem and a real need, and you're using PPC to amplify great content to people you want to people who have this issue, to your target sort of ICP, and sort of getting them sort of engaged, and then really kind of, making sure that you have really great visibility on the back end on the type of leads it's bringing into your CRM, the quality of those leads, kind of who they are, as well as kind of seeing as how they're engaging, and making sure that follow up kind of afterwards in terms of nurture workflows, in terms of what SDRs take from there on after, is kind of completely kind of matched to that and appropriate. I think there can be this kind of disjointedness sometimes where a brand might want to run a PPC campaign, but they don't have the content to kind of really achieve what they want to do. They don't have the follow-up processes. They can't track any of it. And so it's a bit of a spray and pray sort of approach. And especially in kind of B2B, you can waste a lot of money sort of very quickly. Hence why, very quickly PPC compared to sort of other sort of marketing channels can get like quite a bad rap. But when you do have all this infrastructure working, you're showing great content to sort of, the right sort of people for your business, that's where I see it sort of really work. And that really requires engagement from sort of stakeholders and basically the whole business. And that tends to be the key differentiator.
One company that stands out to me, or at least I remember their ads and I remember enjoying them, was Monday.com. I think it was like way back in the day when they were just doing their first expansion. They had really like nice YouTube ads that spoke to the problem, and they were fun to watch. And that's not usually the mark with B2B, at least. So that's one that comes to mind.
I think there's a great question about PPC. There's no sort of lasting effect, or it's supposed to be less lasting effect. So if I put £1,000 in today and I get nothing back, it just feels like I'm plowing cash into Google's infinite black hole.
There are a few ways you can tackle that, because it's whether you're going for brand awareness, whether you're going for leads, or how you're sort of defining the program. I think spending sort of £1,000 and kind of not getting any leads back, what I will say is that a lot of these tools and sort of platforms are becoming sort of increasingly kind of automated, and there is increasing dependency on the power of Google, Facebook, LinkedIn's kind of algorithm finding the right user. And I do think there is a separate discussion to be had around, is actually there a minimum amount of spend you need to use? Because obviously spend equals data equals a more powerful algorithm, which equals results. But I do think there probably is a lot of strategy and a lot of thought that can be put in beforehand to try and maybe decrease that ramp up time and learning period. If you've really thought and you've really identified maybe content that's worked really well from an organic perspective, or worked really well in kind of social media, and you're promoting that, and you've got a really defined ICP, and of course you can track it all through your CRM, whether it be HubSpot, Salesforce, etc. You're putting yourself kind of in the best possible position that you can give yourself the most confidence that when you are putting in every single dollar, pound, whatever, that you are sort of having some sort of impact. And I think equally, one of the things that also can be quite difficult is, when you think of other channels like PR, like SEO, etc., there's less of a thought of, if I put another pound in there, what's going to happen? Because you're so, you're so focused on the interface and getting that number out of it. Sometimes there, I suppose, all this thought does need to be kind of put into it to make sure that you get the best sort of possible results. But yeah, I do think you also kind of need to leave it a bit of time and make sure that you're optimizing and sort of getting it up to the best possible position kind of as well.
Gonna throw some shade at some founders out there. If you're this person, don't be this person. If you are getting a PPC agency or someone to do your PPC and you want to spend $2,000 and you want to get $5,000 out of it in the first month, it ain't gonna happen. Like, maybe sometimes it happens, but if you're in B2B, you're gonna have to spend several £1,000s figuring out what's going to work, and it's not the agencies or the individual's fault that it's not working. It just physically takes time to learn what works. The same way when you first started doing any type of marketing, you put stuff out there and you had to see what works, and it's kind of the same thing. But again, as Dan mentions, there's such a high visibility of every click, every pound, everything that's getting spent, that you're just caught up in this, oh, I've just spent £500 and it's never coming back. You need to spend some money on learning stuff, and you do it in all the other channels. It's not necessarily so visible up in your face in a dashboard.
This is why PPC, it needs to be integrated kind of into the center of marketing, and you can get an awful lot of data really quickly, right? If you're going to be planning, I don't know, maybe an SEO campaign that requires loads of blog contents, pillar pages, X, Y, and Z, you can really quickly see if that content resonates with an audience, right? Whereas you could be spending 6 months a year and then you're ranking number one, but actually, it's not bringing in maybe the right sort of user and isn't converting as much as maybe you thought you would. So I think it's kind of also kind of inverting it as well, as it's not just all about getting leads, or whatever, but it can be used as a tool to really quickly sort of orient or prioritize things within sort of other marketing channels within your marketing function.
Yeah, it's a shortcut to visibility, isn't it? On whatever platform, it's a shortcut to waiting for organic visibility. So to be fair, I think a lot of the criticism that's leveled at PPC in general, not here obviously, but in general, is not really a criticism of the media. It's more a criticism of the particular implementation.
Yeah, agreed.
Do you think there's a base, because we're talking now about sort of implementing it in the outset, do you think there's and maybe there isn't, but a baseline or minimum, not even spend, but minimum expectation, minimum spend, minimum term that people should be, have as a benchmark for PPC? Is it dependent on B2B or B2C? A complete novice question, but I think people should know this from the outset. There's, here are the minimum requirements that you should really be aware of before you do this.
It will depend on what market you're in. I mean, everyone, it will depend on what sort of company you're in, how long your sales cycle is to really define whether it's going to be, sort of successful or not. But typically, I would recommend that you at least try it for sort of 3 months to kind of really get a sense of, setting it live, optimizing, testing, trying, whether you're sort of on the trajectory to sort of a really good place. And I would also kind of sort of say that from a sort of B2C e-com perspective, you can sort of see, you can improve things, but you can see very quickly because the sales cycle is very short. From a B2B perspective, where it's not only a longer sales cycle, but it's targeting the right people. And then even in sort of bigger enterprise organizations, it's targeting the right group of people to start pushing things forwards. You're not going to close an enterprise company within the first month. That's just sort of not going to happen. But likewise, what channel would it?
I think it's SEO's turn now. We're going to get into it.
I'm Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm head ninja at a digital marketing agency called ExposureNinja. We do lots of SEO, content marketing, PPC, email, web development, CRO. And I absolutely love digital marketing, relentless about ROI, and there's about 100 of us.
So Tim, you've been doing SEO for a while. How long has it been since you started?
Well, I used to be a professional drummer, and I promoted my little drumming business using SEO before I knew what it was called. So that would have been 2008, which makes me feel super old. But I've been running an agency since 2012.
So it's been some time. And I think it's fair to say that the internet has changed a good amount in the meanwhile. And everyone's doing inbound. Everyone's doing content, everyone's trying to get their stuff out there. Is it even possible to still actively manipulate and get your results to the top anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first time I heard the phrase SEO is dead was a marketer I really respected, a guy called Chris Cardell. Well, at least I respected him at the time, back in 2013, maybe 2014. And this was the death of SEO. You can no longer manipulate Google. You can't hack your way to the top. Panda and Penguin algorithms. Google's too smart for any of that stuff. You just got to play the PPC game. I think the truth is, it's much harder to manipulate Google if we think about the term manipulation as like trying to make Google do something it doesn't want to do. Modern SEO isn't really about manipulation as much as it is actually just feeding Google what it wants. So modern SEO, like when I started, we were getting websites ranked before they were even live just based on their domain names. Like this was really, really easy. It was like stealing candy from a baby, which was great in some ways, but obviously it meant that the search results were like total garbage for a whole bunch of searches. So Google has got better, and that's forced us to be better as marketers. So modern SEO really is about understanding what sort of information is inside the business, getting that information out of the business onto their website, and then making sure that when the customers are searching for whatever problem they have, or whether they're searching for, you know, a commercial intent phrase, making sure that we've presented that information as compellingly as possible on the website so that people find it. So it's much less about like how do we hack the search results and how do we just get the stuff out of your sales team's head and your delivery team's head into blogs, into service pages, product pages on your website so that Google wants to rank them. So in that sense, I think SEO will have a place as long as there are search engines. There will be people optimizing for search. You know, we're thinking about optimizing for TikTok now. Whatever platform comes out, Twitter wants to improve its search as well. People will be optimizing for Twitter search as well. So I think there's always going to be a component of search engine optimization.
So SEO content, Tim. I think sometimes there's, you know, when you sort of go to a content team, sort of from an SEO sort of perspective, and you sort of recommend, you know, you're sort of recommending targeting keywords, and sometimes the sort of blogs and articles that sort of, you know, you recommend have to be quite formulaic. 10 ways to do this, 5 ways to do this, the best, you know, way to do that. For when you're kind of speaking to those, you know, content teams and they sort of say, well, it doesn't really fit with a brand or this and that, what kind of sort of would you say to them, and how would you kind of balance that sort of, you know, brand versus SEO optimized sort of content?
That's a really, really good question. I'd say sit down and let the SEOs do their job. I'm only joking. I think you're right. You don't want to compromise on. You don't want to compromise on the brand. You don't want to compromise on the sort of content standards and the tone of voice stuff that you have. I think there always has to be a balance, right? The tendency is, from an SEO perspective, to be, you know, whatever you want to rank for. Best digital marketing, 10 top digital marketing tips for 2023. And if that feels totally alien to the brand, it's not going to work. So there's no short answer, but it has to be a conversation between the two. I think one way to get this more right is to start with the information from the business first, because a lot of the time, if we're starting from what the SEO wants to write, like you say, they're delivered a framework, a template, and they've got to try and fill in expertise around this really constrictive template. Whereas if we start with, I mean, take a sales team, for example. A sales team will often know the questions that the target customer has, and they know how to answer those questions in a brand safe way, but that uses the customer's language, uses the phrases that the customer uses. You know, if you go to like a kitchen showroom, let's say, and a good salesperson will come up to you and say, so what sort of thing are you after? And you might say, well, I'm looking for something that's very child-proof and looks really sleek and modern. And a good salesperson will then use those phrases back at you throughout the whole conversation. Oh, you might like this one. It's really sleek and modern. It's very child-safe as well. So I think taking that sort of approach where you're starting from how your customers talk and the expertise that you have in the business, rather than starting from like what 10 keywords do we want to pile into this article, tends to produce something which feels a little bit more natural than just, you know, the generic articles that we're used to seeing ranking.
Tim, what do you do when people turn around to you? I'm sure your agency gets this all the time and asks you, what's the ROI of the blog post or the pillar page that you've created?
There should be an ROI, maybe a bit controversial. I think there should be an ROI to every single page or post that we're creating. It might not be immediate, but over the long term, you should be able to track it. I think one of the reasons that it often doesn't feel like there's an ROI to a lot of blog posts, for example, is that people just publish a blog post. They won't have any sort of call to action in there, or if they do have a call to action, it'll feel really inelegant and at the completely different stage of the customer journey. So let's say that we're selling employee performance management software, right? And we might have a blog post about 10 tips for having a performance conversation with your team. Well, you don't necessarily want to go into that with a call to action for get a free trial for our software, because it feels really alien. Like, whoa, hold on. I was just looking for tips about how to have a conversation. So what you might want to do is have lower commitment calls to action, like get our perfect guide to employee engagement or something like that. So it's a download. So it's a little bit lower commitment. And then as long as you've got that email address, you know where they've come from, you know they came originally from that blog, you can track them through your CRM as they progress to becoming a customer. So I think every blog post should have a goal and it should have a commercial goal. It might not just be like buy my shit right now type thing. And if you've got that, then you should be able to track an ROI, even if it takes a little while for it to come.
Another question that I get, and I'm not an SEO person, I just happen to like SEO, is, okay, so we're looking at ranking for all these keywords, but why aren't we ranking for, there's two options. One is a very niche keyword that has no search volume, or two, it's a very broad keyword that basically Wikipedia ranks for. And, the upset that comes with the fact that I'm like, no, we can't do those. What is your take on that?
There's two different answers. Like sometimes we've had clients who are actually getting ranked for phrases that there looks like there's no search volume is actually a total game changer. So my very first ever client, I built a website for my next door neighbor who was a plasterer, and I got him ranked for plasterer in Tiverton, which is the town that we lived in. Now Google said that there was no search volume for this phrase, pointless. Well, he was able to buy a house from the ranking for that thing. That's how my whole endeavor into SEO started. So I would take there's no visibility, there's no search volume for this phrase with a bit of a pinch of salt. We've just, I've just been doing award entries, and we're still getting clients where we can rank them for phrases where there is very small search volume. As long as it's really targeted, as long as they know that, I think this is what my customers search for, then we would say, right, just go for it. Even though the data says it's a waste of time, we would just go for it and maybe test it with some PPC to see if there is actually search volume. Having said that, you're not going to build a massive business ranking for phrases that no one's searching for. So there does need to be some search volume if you're expecting, let's say you're expecting 10 leads a month. Well, you're not going to get 10 leads a month from search volume where there's like nothing. If your conversion rate's 2%, and to get 10 leads a month, you'd need whatever, 5,000 visits. I don't know, whatever the numbers, you get the drift. On the flip side, targeting these really broad phrases where there's potentially very little commercial intent, targeting the sort of phrases that Wikipedia is ranking for, we would often say to people, look, you can spend the next 2 years blowing hundreds of thousands of pounds trying to beat Wikipedia on content to rank for a phrase that if Google's serving Wikipedia, Google says that this is an informational search with very low commercial intent, otherwise they wouldn't be ranking Wikipedia. So you could spend all of this time, all of this energy ranking for something where there's potentially very little reward for you anyway. So let's just do that later on. We can target that phrase one day. Let's, for now, just go after the stuff which we think is going to lead to money and much more quickly. So we would never say, like, don't go for any phrases. It's just about saying, okay, maybe this isn't the best use of your time.
The question I was going to ask, just to jump in here, was you mentioned having ROI for each page, which I think is incredible. So like I guess holding that as a KPI or something that you would discuss with clients. How do you actually, how does that work in practice? Sorry, again, novice question here, but how if a website has dozens of pages that are indexed, how do you do that, and what's the process there?
Yeah, so what we would typically look at, because when we tend to work on these sorts of campaigns, we're really conversion focused. So we're really looking at what's driving the most conversions, and then we would look through the pages that are ranking, the pages that are driving the most traffic, and look at the conversion rates of each of those and say, have we got anything here that's just a bit of a passenger? Have we got stuff that's ranking, it's driving traffic, but it's not generating any conversions? And then we'd either make sure that that traffic is being retargeted or remarketed, or we'd have a look at the call to action on it and make sure that it's, pitched at the right level for the content. You do get sometimes where you'll find that you've got a page that's ranking for something really, totally random, like Love Island Winners 2018, because you've mentioned that somewhere. For obviously stuff like that you have to take out and ignore. But we would basically just look through the top traffic generating pages and making sure they're all working really hard by making sure that the CTAs are pitched at the right level.
Ems, what is even customer marketing and advocacy? It's not real marketing. They're already customers.
Again, as Courtney said, if I had £1 for every time I heard that, I'd be a rich, rich woman. So yeah, I mean, customer advocacy is a principle to apply to your marketing, and it's about sort of co-creating content with your customers that allows them the opportunity to kind of say good things about you, but also helps them potentially raise their own personal profile through you kind of amplifying the lovely things that you say. And I think obviously that probably feeds quite well into PR. I know that's a huge bit, if you've got clients saying good things about you, that's always going to be a good news story. I think really it's got a bit of a bad reputation potentially with some, because I think people do see it as just a way to kind of like, I'm just going to buy my clients fancy bottles of wine and ask them to do me a G2 review, or I'm going to just like do this boring case study and stick it on the website, and the only person who's ever going to look at it is a procurement person, but then sales are going to ask me for like more of them because they're desperate. That's not real customer advocacy. Okay. That is just creating boring content that you probably need to create. Customer advocacy is really more about kind of, working with your customers, creating really good relationships with them. Of course, there's some marketing content that comes out the back of it. Of course there is. But it should feel like something that you do together that is mutually beneficial, not just something that benefits your business.
Have you ever had any, I guess, and this is going to be an obvious, yes, but and it is so aligned to PR. Customer advocacy is hugely important to sort of PR and, building the brand. But I guess, have you ever had any particular challenges with companies you work with or clients not wanting to sort of really get involved? Because there's a lot of things that like maybe a cyber company is like really confidential, or there might be issues in a particular sector. So how do you get over that, that challenge really?
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the biggest barriers, and why a lot of businesses don't actually invest in customer advocacy really, is because they're like, oh, we work with all these big logos, there's too much red tape, they're never going to want to do anything. And I think there are opportunities there for you've got to explore the different levels of permission that someone has. So like, for example, this is a really good one, is that they might say, we can't actively do anything. Like, you can't use our logo on your website. We can't do a case study for you because like red tape. But can you invite that person as their own person onto your podcast to then talk about experiences? The likelihood of that is yes, because they are representing themselves, not the business. So I think it's just about exploring like, what levers can you pull? What types of content can that person create? They might also be quite happy and comfortable being kind of an advocate in private, which is also fine. So like, if they are happy to do like reference calls with other clients, that is hugely valuable. If they are happy to like, if you've got your own community platform, they're happy to take up a role in your community that's kind of like behind the scenes, again, hugely valuable. So it's just, I think it's about exploring it and not giving up the first time someone says no, like no to, because you've asked them for a case study, which I hate that term anyway. But yeah, keep trying to find what it is that you can do.
I've got one. So it can be difficult enough getting clients to just like approve the work that you're doing, let alone do this stuff. Assuming that there's like a pot of goodwill that you might have with your clients, is it worth it? Like, is the reward actually worth it, given that they might only say yes to one question I asked them in the next 6 weeks, so I'm probably going to ask them to sign off their new website?
Yeah, it is worth it. I think there are so many reasons why. I think it's worth it for your business because let's face it, if something comes in through customer advocacy, like a word of mouth referral, or someone's come to your webinar and they've heard a client talking about their actual real life issues and challenges, that is going to be better than probably any marketing or if anything a salesperson can ever say to you. Anyway, I'm going to diss the salespeople because we're all marketing here. So I think, it's really valuable to ask. I think timing is everything. It's key. Like, you've got to understand where the relationship is. I think, Tim, as you say, if there's like a pot of goodwill that's built up, that obviously is a natural tie. But I think another really good way of looking at it is to make sure you have a customer advocacy program and that you know at which points along the customer journey, if things are going well, you can ask for things. So it's not just like a random out of the blue ad hoc thing. I think another thing that's really good is I love it when people are like, let's put customer advocacy either in the contract or set it up from the outset with a client. So like if you're bringing in a big logo, having a plan to say like, how are we going to win some awards together? How are we going to like showcase the amazing stuff that we're going to do together? And like thinking about that before like they maybe have even signed the deal so that they've got it in their head that actually we're going to try and do more than just, all of that. I think all of that pre-work is really, really important.
I think one place I see where customer advocacy falls down and it's really hard to recover without this relationship is with CS. So in a traditional SaaS tech business, CS usually owns the relationship with the client. And if CS are unwilling to open you into that relationship, I think your options are very much cut. I don't know how, like, what your take is and how creative you can be if that relationship doesn't work.
Yeah, you've got to put yourself in the middle of everybody. I think customer success and product and sales, everybody needs to understand the value and why actually what you can do can help strengthen their relationship. Ultimately, if you do one of these kind of like proper customer advocacy programs and it ends up in being this amazing like PR news story that everybody's like, yeah, we all feel good after this, that's going to make the client love you more. They are going to feel good. Everybody's going to feel good. They're going to get loads of kudos internally for the stuff they've done. So I think it's just about helping them understand the value that it can bring to the relationship. And the other thing that I will say is that I have been used quite often by CS teams as when something's going wrong with a client to kind of come in and help turn it around as like a, like maybe the relationship's a bit crap. How can the person who's responsible for making relationships good, like what can we do? Can I even introduce like if something's going wrong with a client, can I introduce them to another customer who is having a better experience, but there are similarities in the challenges they face? So even it's that like, I guess it's like relationship building client to client as well as client to prospect. So there are multiple ways you can kind of be used, but that's kind of what I would always do with the customer success team is be like, how can you use me and I will do whatever you want. And then once they start to see that and they start to see the relationships build and the trust, then they're kind of a bit more comfortable.
I'm going to ask about that sort of that situation where you've come in to sort of save the relationship. Can you just, I guess, give us an example of that? Because I think that's an area that you don't immediately think of. Is that how you are potentially the glue between different organizations within the department, but also coming in to save what could have been a failed relationship with the business.
So I will give you a very real example, and I'll also say that I think it's that you got to think about it like you are trying to build a community. So if I'm actually trying to build a community in the truest sense, I actually want the relationships to all be mutually beneficial. And that's how I always think about it. I'm like, well, you've given me something, what can I give you? Or vice versa. So like the example I'll give you is I will not say which company, there was a law firm who had bought our SaaS product, and I think they were thinking about churning, to be honest with you. It wasn't going well. They were like, we're just really, really struggling to get like adoption, all of that kind of stuff. And really like the CS person was like, could you come on this call and talk about like where you've potentially worked with other law firms in the business, like challenges they've faced, all that kind of stuff. And we got talking and I was just like, do you want to just talk to another customer who's done the same thing and had the same challenges? And they were like, yeah, we do. they have that conversation, it's off the record, there's no one from the business on the call, we just let them have like a really open, honest conversation with each other, and they didn't churn because they were able to actually just have a real conversation with each other about what was going on and how they could get the most out of the technology. And we know usually with technology, it's not the tech that's the problem, it's the change management that's the issue. So, you know, it was all about kind of navigating that. After that, we then decided to set up a law forum for all of our kind of like law clients so that they could all talk to one another, kind of like without us kind of getting involved through our online community. And again, that proves to be popular because they're like, there's shared interests. They all kind of want to know what each other are doing, and they feel like it's a safe space to actually share their challenges.
I'm sold. This sounds great, Emma.
Yeah, if you want to talk about it more, we can talk about it afterwards. So now we're going to come on to grilling our marketing generalist, the person who thinks they can just do a bit of everything and it's all fine. I'm going to be rude about it. Sorry, love. So, what is the ROI of each of the items in your plan, Ruta?
Well, that is a complex question. I am very uncomfortable. I'm telling you, I would tell an actual client. I'm very uncomfortable with predicting ROIs on every item in a marketing plan. But what I am comfortable with is saying how much we're going to spend and what I want the ROI to be on the entire spend. So as a marketing function, you know, we might spend X, I want X back by the end of the year, and I'm going to change my spending to get that ROI. The hardest version of this question is when there is no data, there has been no marketing team, and someone's asking you, what's the ROI of changing the homepage? And I'm like, am I Jesus? Like, I could never tell you that. Like, no one could ever tell you that accurately. So that's the worst version of it, and that's why I say I'm very uncomfortable with that, but I will work towards a year target and a year ROI. Otherwise, hopefully I can use some data that we have already and I can indicate some ROIs. But again, questions like, what is the ROI of a single page? Or what's the ROI of a brand redesign? Or what's the ROI of, I don't know, getting your CEO to be a LinkedIn thought leader? They're all very connected. All the ROIs basically play on each other, and a website can amplify every other channel's ROI, for example, or degrade it depending on how well it goes. So that's my official take, and I personally really hate that question because everyone also feels very clever when they ask that question. So you have to play a little bit to the ego of like, yes, you're very clever for asking, but also I will not give you the answer. Thank you.
Play politician.
Do you find, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here now that you've talking about this. Do you find you often get that sort of, and I think this is because founders have to do everything, that suddenly they're like a marketing expert, right? And so I get it. There's a push and pull of like, I've heard a couple of founders be like, well, I want to try every role before I hire for it. And I'm like, how do you, so I guess and that plays into what you're saying, that there's the expert opinion there that, you should be able to tell them the ROI of a brand, a rebrand, or updating the website.
Yeah. It happens a lot with founders. It happens a lot with board members, especially because they're there to kind of double check what the founder is doing. So often the founder's okay with me, doing an ROI for the year, etc. And then they go to the board and they present the plan. And they're like, oh, well, we need an ROI for each item. And I refuse at that point. So I try to talk and educate to both the groups if I can get in touch with them. And I keep a very close eye on the metrics that actually indicate whether we're losing or making money. So if you put that barrier in place, basically to say, I'm going to report on my ROI every month, which can be detrimental, by the way, like it's a ballsy move to begin with. But if you can do that and kind of just keep them calm, you can say at the end of the year, I can show you what the ROIs are for each channel.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the hardest bit. I think every sort of function in marketing wants to prove that you're adding versus detracting from the sales and et cetera, and actually making money for the business. But to put an ROI against everything is actually very, very difficult. if not impossible, and if not making up numbers, like pulling it out of the sort of air. And I think that's the one through line that I find so difficult with the function, all of the umbrella function within marketing. And yes, it should be data led, absolutely. But sometimes it's like you're gonna force my hand. I'm just gonna make stuff up, like.
Or I just say I don't know, like, and I can't give you the number. I'm sorry. And then as a consultant, that can bite you in the ass basically, because someone else will give them the number when they push for it. So it depends what ethical stance you want to take, really.
Yeah, we don't get it so much, but we used to get people saying, well, how many keywords am I going to rank for in this month? And our answer would be, well, we can't tell you, and anyone who can is lying, right? So they'll lie about other things as well. This is ludicrous. Like, you need to. The whole reason I wrote a book about SEO was to try and educate people on this topic. And I think what you're saying about like founders and board members asking these types of questions, because they only understand the numbers, the money in, the money out type thing, that's all they ask the questions on. They don't understand enough about what they're buying so that they know that whether they're getting fed back is bullshit or not. So, there has to be that education piece, which you mentioned, is just so important.
Yeah, they can ask a question, but it does, unless you're an actual marketer, which is why I like to get involved in marketing interviews with my clients. Unless you're an actual marketer, you won't know if the answer is good or not. It might sound good, they might bring up numbers, they might seem impressive, but unless you have the experience, you can't really qualify whether their answer is bullshit or not. And as an agency, I'm sure you guys hear more than enough of that of, well, they said this and they did this and blah blah blah.
Next question, you ready? So why are we not hitting our targets? You've been here for like a month, Ruta. What's going on?
Oh my goodness. First of all, you know what? There's no one else that wants to hit target more than I do. I live off of that number. All of my self-worth is in my job as a marketer, as sad as that fucking is. I'm working on it in therapy, but it's really sad, and I know that. So the reason why we're probably not hitting target is because, much like when you hire a salesperson, you will have to have a ramp up in training them, in getting them to learn how to demo, in getting them to, up their sales skills. And then there's on top of that, the sales cycle, which is usually a predefined no number in a company. Marketing has the exact same thing. So I always say, if this is my rough equation for wanting to get money back out of marketing, take your sales cycle, whatever that is, let's say it's 3 months, add basically another 3 to 6 months, depending on how harsh you want to be on top of that. And that is the amount of time you would at least have to expect to wait to get money out of marketing. So if your sales cycle is 12 months and you're going for crazy, huge deals with enterprise revenues, if you brought in a marketing team in January, they will get some things, you'll be able to see some things like leads or maybe uplift in traffic, all of those things. But the actual money out will be coming out not this summer, the next summer. So that's just something to bear in mind. It's the same as with sales ramp up. It's the same as probably with CS as well. Marketing is no different to that. And then they fire me, obviously, and get someone that says that they'll get you results in 2 months, but that's fine.
Always.
I think the key is like having different types of target, isn't it? It's not just like money target. So we always say whether it's like content marketing or SEO or something, there's like indicative measures that happen first. So when you're ranking a page, you're not going to get any traffic when it's moving from page 10 to page 8. So you need to check, okay, so that's moving in the right direction. Then you'll start to get traffic. Then you'll start to get leads. So, we've been here a month already, yeah, and we're on target because in the first month we're going to have all our plan done. We're going to have ideas for what we're going to do in each different channel. Then we move into phase 2, implementation. Then we move into phase 3, which is when we'll start to see things moving. So I think that's also an opportunity for us to get some quick wins that the client sees as wins, even if they're not, hey, I'm a millionaire.
Agreed. And I think being, especially as a consultant or an agency, you can be quite strict about that kind of ramp up process. It's a risk to take for sure, but if you're going in-house and you are the new head of marketing, oh my goodness, set your boundaries, set the plan, and if someone's trying to kick you off the plan, you hold up the plan and you say, this is the plan, we're on track, everything is going the way it's meant to go, or it's not, and we're fixing it like this. But don't let someone just trample all over you and basically like steamroll you into whatever they want to be done. That's my biggest advice on that one.
Do you think sometimes actually in marketing today, sometimes data's great, but do you think sometimes it can be misleading and push sort of stakeholders the other way? Putting all investment into sort of one channel or the other, and do you think sometimes data can be a little bit misleading? I
think so. So my background, like education-wise, is actually economics, which is 3 years of crying your eyes out in statistics lab. So I'm so super aware of that, and data interpretation is wild, to say the least. Like the way you can interpret data, the same data in marketing is wild. So I totally agree that more data isn't necessarily better for teams. You know what, let me retract that. More data is better for teams. It's not better if somebody that isn't marketing educated is reading the data, because more data will lead to more conclusions that might be wrong because they have more data to make the conclusions off of. So Emma and I speak to about this actually, I think, in another bit of content that we did. The data that you show to stakeholders should be controlled, and the data that you have in team should also be controlled. So you make sure that you show the right level of depth and we're not talking about hiding shit or interpreting results that are not there. I just mean, for example, the ROI per channel. If you show that to a stakeholder, they'll cut everything that's not making money, right? That's the go-to interpretation. Whilst, for example, PPC might be getting ROI on a whole different channel because of the re-exposure, and then if you cut PPC, it will cut the ROI of 3 different channels, and they don't understand that. So just being careful about what data you give people access to, to me, is the best way to handle this, because in general, more data is better, and get good at being skeptical with data and get good at testing, which will show you that your assumptions about why the data is wrong in general. But yeah, that's kind of how I usually handle it. But I do love a little data mining.
So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Dan, Tim and Courtney and Ruta. We all got grilled. It was wonderful. The real winner here is the CEO or the board members that really get it and want marketing to work together so that we can, generate revenue and do amazing marketing. Thanks everyone. We'll be back soon.